Hey everybody, I am Kat from the Wild Alaskan Company recipe team, and today I'm going to show you how to make fish tacos with ground sockeye salmon. So ground meat, but salmon. I love making this recipe. It's really easy to do and it's fun. Very nostalgic for me to make tacos with ground meat, sort of Tex-Mex style. So before we get to the cooking, just some minor housekeeping. If you're watching from Facebook or YouTube, feel free to drop any questions into the comment section or the chat. If you're watching on YouTube, you will need to be signed in on your YouTube channel. If you're watching on Facebook, you're already logged in, so you'll be able to interact with us. Otherwise, sit back, hang out, and just watch. You should be able to find a link to the recipe that I'm featuring today in the description of the event. It's called something like Tex-Mex style salmon tacos, and it's so good. So feel free to look over the ingredients there. If you need to leave before today's event is over, don't worry. You can watch the entire recording on Facebook or YouTube immediately after this is over. So pick up right where you left off. I think today will go pretty quick because this recipe is so quick. So maybe bank on hanging out here for 20 or 30 minutes, something like that. All right. Well, I am also joined today by someone from the member experience team, one of my colleagues, Carl, if he wants to come onto the camera to say hello. Just want to introduce you to one of my colleagues. Definitely do not be shy in reaching out to anyone on the member experience team. If you have questions about your order, if your fish comes thawed, if you don't know what to cook tonight, we got all the answers and all the help for you. So hi, Carl, thanks for being here today. All right, well, let's start getting into today's cooking demo. I'm going to introduce you. Some of you may have had this before, but this is ground sockeye salmon. It's exactly what it sounds like. It's sockeye salmon that's been ground up into a sort of ground meat product. For sure, this is not like the expected ground protein option that you usually buy at like a regular store, but it is a really, really good product that I find can be used in place of anything like ground beef, ground pork, ground turkey, ground chicken. It's surprisingly versatile. It's also less greasy, super lean, compared to something like ground beef or ground pork. You have a different set of nutrients from wild salmon compared to a lot of land-based proteins. Ground sockeye actually has tons of vitamin D, for example, which, every time I go to the doctor, they tell me I'm deficient in vitamin D. I don't know how that's possible because I eat so much salmon, but, here we are eating our vitamins through food, hopefully. And like other ground meats, I would say this cooks really quickly. Salmon especially quickly because it's so lean. I know it doesn't sound like it's something that can be used really interchangeably, but because it's fish, but just like for instance, a salmon burger is never going to taste exactly like a beef burger. But I find that this is a lot more versatile than you think, especially when you're using it in recipes where you're adding in lots of stuff like ground spices, sauces, lots of flavors where you're sort of just using the protein as a vehicle for these flavors. And then it takes on all of those tastes and components really readily so that sometimes you might not even realize that you're eating salmon. Not that there's anything wrong with knowing what you're eating, but it's a very pleasant surprise, I think, in a recipe like the one we're making today. So I'm going to make these into a Tex-Mex style taco. I will introduce you briefly to the ingredients here. I've got coriander, or actually this is cumin. No, backtracking. I have sweet paprika, cumin, chili powder, garlic powder, salt, some cornstarch. Coriander is also on the list of ingredients, but I completely ran out of it. Totally fine. If you are missing the coriander or cumin, you can kind of get by and still have a really nice seasoning mix. The one thing two things that I wouldn't leave out of this combination of spices, I would not leave out the paprika, and I would not leave out the garlic powder. I feel like those are like two key components of it. Everything else you can kind of get by without it. And you should use some cornstarch in here too to kind of create like a nice saucy base for the actual mixture. So this is like a homemade taco seasoning blend. You're more than welcome to use any sort of taco seasoning blend that you like. I like this one because it is very much like, it has that flavor of Tex-Mex style, like American tacos that I used to eat when I, made tacos growing up in Kansas City, where we did not know how to make a really good taco, but actually really tasty. Yeah, all we're gonna do is mix this together with the fish momentarily, and then we're gonna have a really good base for a fish taco. So let's get started cooking the salmon. I'm gonna move over to my stovetop here. Set this to medium heat. I like cooking the fish using a neutral oil here, but if you're using something like olive oil, totally fine. Anything that's kind of an all-purpose cooking oil, I think works really well. Using something like olive oil is going to add in a little bit of that flavor into this, and it's not necessarily a bad thing, but I'm using a neutral oil. What we're going to do once this is hot enough is we're going to add the ground salmon to the pan. So this probably just needs a few minutes. In terms of the taco shell, actually, I'll show you what I'm doing since we have a moment here. I went ahead and bought these really nice corn tortillas that are made locally in my, just like a neighborhood tortilleria. And I'm turning them into tostada shells, so kind of like a hard taco shell, but they're going to be flat. So all I'm doing is baking them with a little bit of oil, and hopefully, if the recipe I was using was a good one, those will be nice and crunchy by the time I'm serving up my tacos. If you wanted to turn those into hard taco shells, you'd probably just need some sort of a mold to shape it. But let's see, this looks pretty hot now. Seeing a little bit of a shimmer in the oil. So let's go ahead and add the ground sockeye. Here, a little bit of a sizzle here. You want to use a large pan for this so that the fish has space to cook. So I'm just going to hold off on the rest of this. Save it for another dish. And then we're just going to let this cook for about maybe 5 minutes or so. The thing about ground sockeye compared to something like a really fatty ground meat is it's not going to give you the really crisp browning that you would see on something like ground beef or ground pork. You're also not going to get the big oil slick that comes along with that. So you're not necessarily looking for browning here, but we are just looking to cook the salmon through. It's funny because in most cases I like salmon medium rare, but something like this, even if it's cooked all the way through, it's not going to be tough or dry. So we're not looking for medium rare here. If you start to see any sort of kind of like a white, I guess, substance forming on the fish, that is albumin, and that'll just cook off. It's just a protein that gets expelled from the salmon as it cooks. And I think it's especially apparent when you're using something like ground sockeye, just because of the shape of the actual meat in here. So let this cook down. And then this is almost ready for me to add some spices here. If anyone has any questions yet, feel free to chime in, but hopefully this is all pretty self-explanatory so far. Actually, if you want to add in the chat where you're tuning in from, if you haven't already, I haven't taken a peek yet. And have you cooked with ground sockeye salmon before? Very curious about that. Let me just check my notes here and make sure I'm not skipping anything. Nope, I'm not. Well, give this a little bit more time to cook. And then what I'm gonna do now is this is all gonna be mixed together. So let me just go ahead and combine these so that it's a nice even mixture. I think I measured out enough for a full pack of the ground sockeye, so I'll probably just use 3/4 of this or so. That looks really nice and evenly distributed. So now I'm going to add this into the pan. Probably a good amount, but we can give it a taste later once this gets combined. And there were juices in the pan from the fish, so that cornstarch that's in that mix is going to help create a really nice saucy base. Soak up some of the extra liquid. It's going to start to smell really good once you've added that paprika, especially comes to life in the heat. Yum. I love how this smells already. So it just takes a minute for that to sort of get combined, and then maybe I'll give this a little bit of a taste. Make sure it's salty enough. Yum. All right, that is pretty much it. I'm gonna go ahead and turn off my heat here, but this looks done to me. It tastes done to me. You can start to, adjust the flavors a little bit here if you wanted to add more salt, a little more chili powder. Speaking of chili powder, anything that's missing, feel free to adjust those amounts to your liking as well. If you're not a huge fan of spice, you can always cut the chili powder in half when you're making your own spice blend, your own seasoning mixes at home. That's like a really fun thing about it. But I know it's also fun to buy pre-made seasoning mixes as well. So that's the taco. I have a couple of ingredients here that I'm gonna use to layer onto the tacos. Gotta have some shredded cheese, of course. I actually had some cabbage at home rather than iceberg lettuce, which I grew up eating iceberg lettuce somehow. Red onion, I'm adding some cilantro in there, which is not a very traditional Tex-Mex ingredient, but more of a traditional ingredient that you'd add to a taco in Mexico. Little sour cream. And let me see if these tortillas are ready. If not, we're just gonna have a warm tortilla shell rather than a tostada or a hard taco. Not quite crisp yet, so whatever recipe I was using, definitely underestimated the amount of time it takes for those to get crispy in the oven. But that is totally okay. I'm just gonna let these cool for a moment because they're super hot. They're a little crunchy on the edges. Delicious. So in the meantime, let me bring over some filling. So each pack of ground sockeye is about 12 ounces. Let me switch over my camera first. Is about 12 ounces of protein. So, I think that's a good amount for maybe 4 tacos or so, 3 or 4 tacos. I'll say 4. I still have some left here in the pan. And obviously, as I mentioned earlier, I didn't cook all of this. I can do that here in a moment. But you should get 4 good tacos out of that. So about 2 servings. And they're so addictively delicious with the garlic powder in here that I think they go really fast. And then all you do from there is add your toppings as you like. That's pretty much it. Any questions, Carl?
I just got one. Do you have any suggestions? I know you have a mixture of different spices there, but would you have any suggestions for like sauce for the tacos, whether it be spicy or not?
I would say, well, for one thing, I actually do have a bottle of hot sauce here. But if you wanted to do something that was more than just adding something like a hot sauce, like I have this habanero. Actually, it's an Alaskan brand that's made with kelp. I like to add a little bit of that on there. But if you wanted to just get like a little creative, creative is, I think, always a good idea in the kitchen. I would try something like, there's a really sort of trendy, cool Japanese barbecue sauce that I have used a couple of times that I think would work really well in a taco like this, where it's kind of like Japanese barbecue style tacos with salmon. Like, it's just all of these ingredients and flavors that maybe you wouldn't normally think of pairing together. But almost anything that you put into a taco shell is going to be delicious. I mean, it's always just a little mix of like textures with like the crunch of the ingredients, maybe the crunch of the shell, plus a really hearty protein. I really don't think there are many wrong answers, but that was the first sauce that kind of came to mind for me. If you wanted to try, gosh, I don't even know like what other sauces would come to mind for this, but really just anything can go in a tortilla and become a taco is my best advice for you for that.
Awesome. Yeah, I love a good avocado ranch.
Oh, yes, that sounds great. Yeah, if you're doing like a sauce to finish it, like an avocado ranch, I think would be really nice. See, what did I tell you? Our member experience team has a great, they have great suggestions for even me when I don't know what to say or eat. So let me go ahead and give this a taste. Well, see if I can hold the taco now that it's like almost crispy from what I was trying to do by baking it, but not quite. So give this a bite. For whatever reason, it never tastes like salmon. It just tastes like taco meat, like a generic taco meat in like the best way. So delicious. And just took very little time to make. If you haven't tried ground sockeye yet, and you're very skeptical that it's going to be really good, this recipe will completely change your mind. It's so easy to use and really just super tasty, super fun. You really can, I forgot to put sour cream on here, travesty. You really can just experiment with using this in place of other ground proteins. We actually have a recipe on the blog for ground salmon sloppy joes. Monica Heim-Kallenberg wrote a whole newsletter about ground salmon on the 13th, Valentine's week. Some of you might have read that. That was like a really fun source of inspiration for me for this particular event. So yeah, it's just a really unexpected, surprising protein option. And I hope you love it as much as I do. But if you haven't tried it yet, it is a special right now. If you want to put the QR code up on the screen, consider adding a pack to your next box. One thing I will say is that if you are a member and you are ordering ground sockeye salmon, plan to use it within a month, maybe 2 months maximum. Not because it goes bad, but because of the protein and the shape of it, that it's been ground up, it is going to be more susceptible to freezer burn or discoloration. Things that happen naturally in the freezer are going to be just a little bit accelerated because of the nature of the product. I actually used some ground sockeye that was older than that, and it looked crazy when you took it out of the package, but otherwise it was like totally good to eat. I'm not going to show you what it looked like before because you'd be probably shocked. But I would definitely recommend using it within 1 or 2 months just to make sure you have that really beautiful bright color and aren't like regretting buying it. So it's so good. I really hope some of you buy some of this stuff because it's just one of my favorite things to work with. And that's pretty much it. If you have any other questions, drop them in before we sign out. But otherwise, join us next week. We have a very special live event. I'll be in Alaska with Chef Mandy Dixon of Tutka Bay Lodge. She's going to be showing us how to make salmon bacon with cold smoked sockeye. It's going to have this really beautiful berry lacquer on top of it, and it's going to be crispy, snacky, delicious. So we're going to have a lot of fun in Alaska with her. Hope you can join us there. It's going to be a little bit later, 6 p.m. Eastern or 2 p.m. Alaska time, if any of you know how to do the math on that. It's 4 hours difference from where I am. And yeah, thanks so much for spending time with me here today. I really hope you enjoy this recipe, and hope to see you next week, especially. Any other questions before I close out, Carl?
Nope, all good here.
Okay, great. Just wanted to make sure I caught everybody. All right, well, thank you, everyone. Live wild. See you next time.